Here to tell us more about what's going on, Paul Vanderwater from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Paul worked for over 18 years at the Congressional Budget Office. He also did policy analysis for the Social Security Administration. Also with us, Ethan Pollack from the Economic Policy Institute. Ethan was the staff economist for President Obama's Commission on Fiscal Responsibility. Gentlemen, good to have you with us on Bloomberg. Ethan, let's begin with you. Is this a big shift as far as you can tell from AARP's position? Because it seems as though John Rother, who's the policy director at AARP, says the ship is sailing and they've got to get on with it.
You know, I'm not really sure. As you said from the initial lead-in, the Journal is reporting one thing, but they've since said that was a mischaracterization. What I do know is that if AARP is thinking that that the ship is sailing, then I think that reveals really the fundamental disconnect that's going on right now within Congress and what's going on in the rest of the economy. Right now, Congress is so focused on fiscal reform and, in particular, on Social Security and on cutting benefits, as opposed to some of the challenges that Americans are facing every day. How do I pay the bills? I need to find a job. How do I stay in my house and stave off foreclosure? I'm not saying Social Security is not a problem, but I think right now the jobs crisis is the most imminent problem that average Americans are facing, and the fact that if it is true that AARP really felt like they needed to be open to benefit cuts for elderly Americans in order to stay in the discussion, I think that's kind of a sad commentary on where the political system is now.
Paul Vanderwater, AARP came out against privatization of portions of Social Security back in 2005. That was a proposal of the Bush administration. Do you think that they still would be opposed to privatization? And indeed, would that change anything in Social Security?
Oh, I think it's quite clear that AARP is still strongly against privatization. The statement they issued today, as I recall, explicitly said so. I don't think privatization is on the horizon this year, but there have been and will continue to be proposals for other ways to change Social Security, which are going to be the focus of debate.
Ethan, how urgent is this problem of reforming Social Security? I mean, people may be going away for the weekend thinking about their future, giving some thought to their retirement plans. Is Social Security safe?
Social Security is safe. It's solvent until about 2036 or so. It is running a cash deficit, but that is only because it had been building up surpluses for the past 30 years or so, and has got a couple $1 trillion in the trust fund, which it can be drawing down. Now, that doesn't. Again, this does not mean that Social Security shouldn't be dealt with. I think that it should be dealt with outside of the context of fiscal reform, in part because in the long run it does not contribute to the deficit. I think that it does have challenges, in particular for old age benefits, people who tend to outlive their assets. Social Security benefits are actually inadequate for them, and same thing with very, very low wage workers. So I think that it's something that should be dealt with. But again, I just really think that right now the most important thing that we should be focused on is the economy, and that requires all of Congress's attention.
Paul, does this highlight the situation in the United States dealing with the idea of austerity versus growth? We're seeing it in Europe. Is this a problem that needs to be fixed now, or are you on Ethan's side and say this is not the most essential thing?
Well, I don't think it's an either-or choice. I think we can do both of these things. We need to take steps in the short run to help encourage economic growth, and also to encourage structuring the economy over the longer haul in a way that can encourage growth.
We've got more on the debate over Social Security. Paul Vanderwater, can you explain for most Americans, is Social Security safe for the future, or are we going to have to make fundamental changes in the way people pay into it and the kinds of benefits that we receive?
Social Security is safe. As Ethan said earlier, the program is solvent for several decades more. And even when you get to the point of Social Security needing some additional resources, the program still could pay 75% of promised benefits even without any changes. So yes, it will be necessary to make some changes to keep the program financially sound, but we don't need to do anything extreme such as the old President Bush proposal for privatization.
But Ethan, Ethan, let me bring you in on this. I mean, Ethan, aren't people living longer and therefore the amount of benefits paid out will increase? Demographics alone might call for some changes.
It's true that people are living very slightly longer, but the first thing we should point out is that the people that are living longer actually tend to be people in the top half of the socioeconomic spectrum. Actually, people for the last couple decades, the life expectancy for people in the bottom half of the earnings, which are people that actually rely most on Social Security, they are ones that actually they're the ones that actually are not living that much longer. And we should know that there's if you just increase the retirement age, what that really is just an across the board cut for people for a couple years, and there's really no evidence to show that if you increase that retirement age, right now people are actually taking the early retirement age, in part because the labor market is so bad for people between the ages of 62 and 65, and oftentimes they're forced to get out of the labor market because they need to either they're sick or they need to take care of a family member. So I think that this whole thing that we can just get people to work longer, that's easy for us to say. I work behind a desk, but for those of us, for those people that have manual labor, for their entire lives, working past 65 can be really actually dangerous to their health.
Paul Vandewater, do you believe that this is also part of the greater debate about entitlement programs? I mean, you said that Social Security is safe and will be safe for decades to come, but we have Vice President Joe Biden meeting with congressional leaders this week in Washington, trying to figure out how to save $4 trillion out of the budget. Is this part of the wider debate about things like Medicare, for example?
Well, it certainly is a part of this wider debate on how to deal with our long-run budget situation. But no one is suggesting that any significant cuts be made in Social Security in the short run, that if Social Security benefits are pared back slightly or if Social Security taxes are increased slightly, that's likely to have the greatest effect over the long haul. But even that would be extremely important for two reasons. One, to secure Social Security itself, which is very important, but secondly, to provide an indication to the financial markets that the federal government's budget in the long term is on a sustainable path.
Well, what about borrowing from the Social Security Trust Fund? Hasn't that been debated previously?
Well, the surpluses in the Social Security Trust Fund that have accrued over the past 30 or so years have in fact been borrowed by the federal government, and those will be paid back. So there's no extra resources there to borrow.
Well, you say that they will be paid back. Is that going to be something that you think that's going to be debated by congressional leaders and the administration?
No, it's not a subject for debate. The Social Security trust funds hold government bonds that they've received because of the amounts they've loaned to the Treasury in the past. And there's no doubt that the Treasury is going to make good on those obligations. They're just like obligations to you or to me or to a financial institution.
Ethan, then why do you believe that this has created such a response, at least on the part of some senators, saying that if AARP is indeed changing its stance on Social Security, that this could be a big shift and also a positive one in the debate?
Well, I would obviously disagree that it would be a positive shift in the debate, but I think it is reflective of the fact that right now, what Congress is paying attention to is trying to do a lot of fiscal reform, in particular on the backs of, this is not just on the elderly for Social Security, but they're also especially the Republicans in the House are trying to push for cuts to Medicaid. Most of those beneficiaries are either children or disabled, blind, or elderly, who need long-term care. So this is about kind of balancing the budget on the backs of the people who really are the least able to really support that weight.
Paul Vanderwater, can you just describe exactly what you think is going to come from these budget negotiations in Washington, leaving aside Social Security for just a moment? Do you think that they're going to find some resolution ahead of the debt ceiling deadline of August the 2nd?
Well, I certainly hope so. Obviously, it's very important that the U.S. Continue to meet all of its obligations in a timely basis. So I think that excuse me.
Well, all right. I guess we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you very much, Paul Vanderwater and Ethan, joining us on the Social Security debate. All right. Still.